Well, through 11 weeks, the Indianapolis Colts find themselves with a winning record at 6-5 and also the number 7 seed in the AFC playoff picture. A huge reason for why the Indianapolis Colts are in this position is first year head coach Shane Steichen. So, in today's video, I want to talk all about Steichen, talk all about the things that he's done for this team, whether it's changing the organization, whether it's the culture change that he's set in the organization, whether it's been the play calling, whether it's been the accountability. There's a lot here when it comes to Shane Steichen. So I'm really excited to dive into this episode today, guys, and really excited to kind of hear your guys' thoughts as well on Shane Steichen and how he has looked so far. We put out a poll earlier on X asking what grade would you give Shane Steichen through 11 weeks. Majority of people were right around that A range for Shane Steichen. Some people said, low A. Some people all the way gave him an A plus. So I think the majority of Colts Nation and the majority of people who watch football and pay attention to what the Colts are doing this year are really, really impressed with Shane Steichen and what he's done with this team so far through 11 weeks. So excited to jump into this one, guys. Let's get to it. What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. I am your host, Cody Felger, and very excited to jump in tonight talking all about Indianapolis Colts rookie head coach Shane Steichen. Like I mentioned at the top of the video, lots of stuff to get into. But before we do that, do me a huge favor, smash that like button, hit the subscribe button. Also turn on the notification bell so that you are in the loop when we drop fresh content just like this. Also, if you would, do me a favor, go check out my channel as well. I have another separate channel where I do just stuff for me. So if you like this kind of content, just me talking to you guys and me giving my thoughts and opinions on all things Indianapolis Colts, be sure to go check my channel out. I am very close to being able to actually put ads on the video and start actually making some money on that channel. So I would greatly appreciate if you guys would take a few seconds, pause this video, go hit subscribe. It would mean the world to me. But without further ado, let's get right into this. And I wanted to kind of approach this video by kind of looking at the Indianapolis Colts and where they were a year ago at this time. So if you remember, and it's kind of ironic I'm doing this on the night and the day that Frank Reich gets fired from the Carolina Panthers, because it was over a year ago now, the Indianapolis Colts fired Frank Reich as their head coach. He had been there since 2018. It had some ups, it had some downs. The Indianapolis Colts at that point, I think, were 3-5-1. And just didn't really seem like they were heading anywhere with Reich. So after the New England game where they got absolutely blanked by the Patriots, the Colts decide to cut ties with him. And who do they replace him with? Not one of the interim coaches that were on staff as their interim head coach, not one of those guys, but with a media personality and a former player, Jeff Saturday. So at this point, guys, the Indianapolis Colts have been a couple weeks with Jeff Saturday. They won their first game against Josh McDaniels, who ironically enough is also fired at this point in the 2023 season. But they beat them and everybody's like, okay, maybe Jeff Saturday's not as bad of a coach as we thought. And then they went on to lose every single game after that. And they finished, obviously, with a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. And so you just look at all the turmoil that was last year. I mean, you had players wanting out. You had accountability not happening. I mean, this team they got blown out multiple times. I think it was 6 times the Colts got blown out in 2022. And they just honestly showed no fight at the end of the year. And I think no other play than the final play of the 2022 season personified the Indianapolis Colts season more than on a 4th and long, Davis Mills throwing basically a Hail Mary to his receiver who outjumps every single Colts defender and gives Houston the walk-off win, right? That's so poetic with how the Colts season had gone. They blew the biggest lead in NFL history to the Minnesota Vikings. They got absolutely destroyed in the fourth quarter by the Dallas Cowboys. Very competitive up till the fourth quarter, and then just got absolutely decimated. Got blown out by the Chargers in prime time. It was just ugly for the Indianapolis Colts last year. So you think about that, they fired their head coach. They had basically a media personality as their head coach at that point, serving in the interim. They couldn't win a football game. Multiple players were injured. Jonathan Taylor was on IR. He wasn't playing. He had that ankle thing that he was dealing with. You're at a rotation of quarterbacks. Nick Foles nearly died on the field when the Colts played the Giants, and you have players doing snow angels beside him as he's spazzing out. I mean, guys, it was all of the kinds of a hot mess last year for the Indianapolis Colts. And so, you think about that, where the Colts were, where the franchise was, it was not in a good spot, not at all. And, a lot of things happened, and it's crazy to look at that last year and just the firestorm of just absolute insanity that was the 2022 season for the Indianapolis Colts. A lot of expectations and obviously a lot of letdown and a lot of disappointment and a lot of, frankly, embarrassing things that happened to the team. And so now, the Indianapolis Colts have an opportunity here to open up their head coaching search. And to their credit, they cast their net very far and very wide. They interviewed a ton of different guys. I don't have the exact number, but I remember it was a crazy number for multiple weeks. The Colts were interviewing guys, and they were waiting on a few different coaching candidates who were still in the playoff picture at that point. They waited all the way until Eagles offensive coordinator Shane Steichen finished the game in the Super Bowl before they officially were able to interview him and confirm that he was their guy that they wanted to move forward with. Out of all of their candidates, he was the guy they wanted to move forward with as their new head coach. And so, after the Super Bowl, the Colts announced it. Shane Steichen was officially the next head coach for the Indianapolis Colts, and Shane Steichen was going to get his pick at quarterback as well. And there was a couple different guys in the quarterback class that you felt like the Colts had at least an opportunity at to get a guy. But, if you felt like one of those top 3 or 4 guys, the Colts were probably going to get them, And really the debate came down to C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, or Will Levis. That was kind of the ones. I think everybody kind of saw the writing on the wall with the Carolina Panthers. They traded up to number 1. They took their guy, Bryce Young, or at least David Tepper took his guy and Bryce Young. And so that left the Houston Texans. They took C.J. Stroud, obviously, traded back up, got Will Anderson Jr., and the Colts had their pick between Levis and Richardson. They go and they pick Anthony Richardson, make him their franchise quarterback. And, the guy with so much talent, and we talked about it forever, how talented this guy was. I mean, one of the most athletic guys you've ever seen at the quarterback position. I mean, he was just that crazy of an athlete. But obviously a lot of concerns with, the lack of playing time, some of the rawness that he displayed in his only starting season at Florida. A lot there when it came to Anthony Richardson. But the Colts made the pick. They got their guy, and they recorded a franchise record in the amount of draft picks that they had in the 2023 draft. They brought in a ton of guys, brought in a ton of talent to this roster. And they also signed a few guys in the offseason. Most notably, they signed a defensive end, edge rusher, Samson Mabukum, and kicker Matt Gay to some substantial contracts. They added a few other pieces as well to their offense. They also added a guy in the 3rd round out of the University of North Carolina named Josh Downs. A lot of people felt like Josh Downs was taken a lot later than anybody anticipated him going, and the Colts were able to nab him there in the 3rd round. And so the Colts had some weapons for Anthony Richardson. They had Michael Pittman Jr. returning. They had Alec Pierce coming back for year number 2. He showed some things in his rookie season. They had some different playmakers at tight end. Jelani Woods was coming off a really strong rookie season when he got targeted. He was a playmaker. And for how bad that Colts offense was at making plays, he definitely stood out amongst the other people in that room. And so they had some weapons and they had some different things. And obviously Shane Steichen brought in an entire new offensive coaching staff, brought in different guys that he knew. and assembled his staff. And so now the Indianapolis Colts head into the season, talking about expectations. There were people, legitimate analysts, that were picking the Colts to win less games than they won in 2022, or just around the number. Again, they won 4 games in 2022. A lot of people expected them to be around that in 2023. So the Indianapolis Colts come out, and the first couple weeks, they start showing some fight. They give Jacksonville all they can handle in week number 1, although they do not pull out that game, unfortunately. Quarterback Anthony Richardson gets a little banged up in those weeks. And then the Colts continue to show fight. They continue to be in every single football game. Although they're not necessarily winning all these games, they're showing that they can compete. In fact, they pull out an upset win against the Baltimore Ravens, who right now are the number 1 seed in the AFC. They pull out that win against the Baltimore Ravens with Gardner Minshew as their quarterback. And you've seen different players really start to ascend and start to really, really grow as players. And you've seen some players who had really disappointing 2022 seasons start to bounce back. You see players like Ryan Kelly start to bounce back. Michael Pittman Jr., although I don't think he had a bad season in 2022, he's taken his game to another level. You've seen Kenny Moore have a resurgence this year. You've seen Julian Blackmon have a breakout year. You've seen Samson Mabukum have a career year. All these different guys really starting to come on and have these really great years for the Indianapolis Colts, and the coaching staff really starting to develop some of these guys and really starting to help them grow into their own. One of the biggest guys I mentioned already that was taken in the draft, Josh Downs, he just completely has lit it up so far as a rookie. He could routinely been one of the best rookie wide receivers, routinely been making plays in this Colts offense, regardless of who the quarterback has been. Josh Downs has been one of the best rookie receivers in the NFL. And the Colts offense right now, despite the fact that unfortunately they lost Anthony Richardson due to a shoulder surgery a few months ago now, the Indianapolis Colts sit right now at a 6-5 record, and they have one of the best offenses. They have a top 10 offense in the NFL, a top 10 offense, despite the fact that they haven't had their starter for literally 80% of the season, if not more of that, so far this year. And also, by the way, the Indianapolis Colts did not have their star running back, Jonathan Taylor, for the first 4 weeks of the season. There were some contract disputes. There was some injury stuff. He got placed on the PUP list. He missed the first 4 games. And you see what happened there in the Indianapolis Colts. They didn't miss a beat offensively. Zach Moss, who the Colts brought in last year via that Nyheim Hines trade, he stepped it up. He was at one point the number 2 running back in the NFL at rushing the football. He was super effective. And now that the Colts have Jonathan Taylor back, the combination of Taylor and Moss, I would argue, is probably one of, if not the most dangerous two-headed attacks in the NFL right now. They are completely just dominating teams. They come off a game where both backs average over 6 yards per carry against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And their offense is humming, despite the fact, like I mentioned, that they had key pieces that got hurt. And by the way, Jelani Woods has not played a single snap this year, and the Colts offense has continued to do what they do. And you've seen a resurgence in the offensive line. You've seen a resurgence in some of these skill position guys. You've seen a resurgence and just belief in this team. You've seen a resurgence in some ways even better than it was couple of years ago when these players were playing at their peak level. You've really seen some of these guys take their performance to even a further level. And it's definitely been very refreshing to see that, especially considering where the Colts were a season ago. Like I mentioned, all the fiasco that was last year. The final thing I want to talk about, guys, in this video is the thing called accountability that Shane Steichen has so much brought this year to the Indianapolis Colts. And to be honest, that was something that was talked about a ton by the previous regime, the previous head coach, the previous coaching staff, but was not ever practiced, was never practiced. there would be players that would be obvious that they are not performing up to standard. They would continue to get playing time over players who clearly deserved it more than them. And so with Shane Steichen, he's been talking about accountability all year. The difference, though, you have seen Shane Steichen not once, but multiple times, he has held firm to the accountability piece. It started in week number 1. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor did not play in that game. Zach Moss actually didn't even play in week number 1. He was healing from a broken arm. So it was Deion Jackson as the starting running back for the Indianapolis Colts. And Deion Jackson, when I say he had a bad game, I think I might be underestimating how poor of a performance Deion Jackson had. It was one of the worst games I've ever seen from an NFL running back. Multiple fumbles, couldn't hold on to the football, couldn't run to save his life. And I think maybe that was a big reason why the Colts honestly lost that game was the untimely turnovers and the ineffective run game. So what does Shane Steichen do? Does he be so loyal to his player that he keeps riding with the guy? No, he doesn't. He doesn't let that weakness, he doesn't let that poor performance continue. He doesn't let a player that single-handedly hurt your offense continue to do so to a fault. What does he do? Deion Jackson is waived. Trey Sermon is signed. Deion Jackson has not been on this roster since. Okay, that was the first time. Another time that happened, Darrell Baker Jr. in week number 2. So the next week against the Houston Texans, dude gets absolutely torched by Houston. They are picking on him. It is obvious he is the weak link in that secondary in that game, and they absolutely pick on him. And to the point where the Houston actually starts to make a comeback, and it's really because they're only targeting that one side, Darrell Baker's side. And so what does Shane Steichen do? Does he roll with the blind faith? Does he say, you know what, Darrell Baker just needs another game to show himself? No. They activate Juju Brents. And he starts, and Darrell Baker takes a back seat. And so that's 2 weeks in a row where Shane Steichen's words and his actions line up. There have been a couple different times where he's done it. The most recent one, another example of Steichen really starting to set that standard and holding to that standard no matter what. This is the most high-profile one we've seen from Steichen this year. Former All-Pro linebacker Darius Shaquille Leonard gets waived, gets released by the Indianapolis Colts. Dude's been complaining about lack of playing time. He gets more of an opportunity in Germany against the Patriots, has a very poor performance, and the Indianapolis Colts release him. And they save, mind you, they save a lot of money, but they hold to that standard that if you don't perform well, you are not going to continue to play, and you're not continuing to have a spot on this roster no matter how much you're getting paid. If you're getting paid the vet minimum, if you're getting paid $19 million a year, it doesn't matter. And so for all these reasons, head coach Shane Steichen has really turned around this Indianapolis Colts franchise in only one season. And all of the things that he has been dealt this year, I didn't even touch on a few of them. Isaiah Rodgers, presumably your number 1 corner this year, gets suspended, is out for the entire season, gets waived by your team. I talked about Jelani Woods has not played a single snap for the Indianapolis Colts. He was one of the lone bright spots on that offense last year. Ryan Kelly's missed multiple games due to a concussion. And Wesley French has had to jump in there, and the Colts have still been able to move the ball effectively. Right? There's been all these different players who have dealt with different things, different injuries, different situations, whatever it is. And the Indianapolis Colts have been able to persevere through it all and sit here right now at the number 7 seed in the AFC playoffs. Look, I don't know if the Indianapolis Colts are going to make the playoffs or not. There are still 6 games to go for the Colts. But one thing is clear. Shane Steichen has changed this franchise this year. He has regalvanized this entire organization, the things that he's doing, the actions he's taking, the schemes he's coming up with, and the ways that he's holding players accountable is just something that players gravitate towards. That's what builds you a winning culture when you actually have coaches and a coaching staff that are adaptable, that are winnable, this is kind of a crazy concept, but coaches that are coachable, coaches that are willing to admit mistakes and move on, who are willing to hold players accountable, who are willing to ruffle feathers when it needs to happen. Those type of coaches are the coaches that win. Those are the type of coaches that ultimately, when you look at it at the end of the day, those are the type of coaches that lead franchises to Super Bowls. And so, again, it's very early in Shane Steichen's tenure, but Shane Steichen's already done things this year that Frank Reich didn't do in his entire tenure in Indianapolis. And it's already starting to have a ripple effect on this organization. Players are playing better. Players are being held accountable. The culture is a lot better. There's just so many different things that are on the right path for the Indianapolis Colts. And it doesn't matter what gets thrown their way. They've been able to weather the storm through some of those hard times. So Shane Steichen, hats off to you. I definitely think he needs to be in the head coach of the year conversations, given all the adversity he's had to face and the fact that he's been able to help the Colts offense be a very, very effective one. I think you need to give him the credit that he deserves. So Shane Steichen, for your consideration, I hope that you will vote for him as head coach of the year because I certainly think he deserves it. But let me know your guys' thoughts on Shane Steichen, on the job that he's done this year for the Indianapolis Colts. Where the Colts were last year compared to where they are this year, it is a stark difference, guys. It's honestly pretty jarring at times. It's crazy to think that the Colts were in such a dark place a year ago and to where they are now. It's just night and day. So let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments below. Like I said, guys, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe, turn on the notification bell so that you are in the loop when we drop fresh content just like this. Other than that, that will do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, guys, go Colts.